And joining me now to talk more about the war in Ukraine is Andrij Dobriansky. He is the Director of Communications for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Thanks for being here. So first, just what do you make of the surprise visit today by the First Lady of the United States and Canada's Prime Minister?
And Bono.
Last but not least. I'm sorry I forgot that one.
Doesn't get bigger for a day of visits. I'll also add to the fact that the Prime Minister of Canada also came with his Deputy Prime Minister. That rarely happens on a joint visit into a war zone. So it was very bullish, and the fact that they got to raise the flag over the Canadian embassy, signaling that Canadian consular services are back up and running in Kyiv. Big moment. Same as we just saw in the report about the consular services trying to be restarted by the American side. Notably, I would mention is the fact of where the First Lady came into Ukraine from, and that was Slovakia. Now, it only has a sliver of a border, but it does have an ambassador that has recently been named as the ambassador from the United States that will now take over for ambassador to Ukraine. So that might be part of the thinking behind the First Lady visiting there, as well as the Romanian First Lady earlier in the camps. But it's also the city that they chose. They chose the capital of that Transcarpathian province, Zakarpattia. That I've been in that city. I was in that city less than a month ago, and that city is only a few kilometers from the border. So I don't know if your report mentioned it, but it was a quick 10-minute drive from the border of Slovakia to Uzhhorod. I also saw that the governor of Uzhhorod, the military administrator for the entire province, was there at the school welcoming the First Lady as well. It was a short visit. But given the strategic place of that city, it was a very logical destination for the First Lady to make that visit. Last thing I'll mention about the fact of where she visited, that province on the southwestern side of Ukraine actually houses the most displaced people in all of Ukraine. It has only been hit with rocket fire once, and that was in the last week. But it has almost, its population has gone from around 1 million to 1.5 million during this time. So that's basically the last stop before people make the difficult decision of leaving their homeland for another country.
So definitely significant. Ukrainians, meantime, gearing up for the Victory Day celebrations tomorrow. I've heard mixed predictions from people we've been talking to. Some say Putin will declare all-out war and escalate this whole operation. Others say that would be an unpopular move in his own country. What do you think? What are you anticipating for tomorrow?
May 9th has always been a touchstone over this 8-year war. So we know that Putin started this war in February of 2014. May of that year was an escalation of conflict. We always get these escalations around Victory Day, whether it's more rhetoric or as he has promised to declare a formal state of war against Ukraine. This also happens around the time of Ukraine's Independence Day on August 24th. They are important historical dates that either Putin wants to unite with the fact that let people know for each anniversary of this date that they had victory during this day, or else it's just goes along with this complete rewriting of history that Putin has plied into his populace. But it's something that notably Ukraine has made a large leap forward in terms of making sure that they honor the date of victory over Nazis with Europe on May 8th. May 9th was a concoction of Stalin actually not signing any separate peace agreement with the Nazis until after the European powers did it. He wanted his own day. And we see this in the parades and propaganda that Putin has done, not only in his country, but all over the world.
And I know the Ukrainian Congress Committee, your organization, has branded tomorrow Russian Shame Day. What does that mean? What does it do? What's the significance of it?
It's not only here in the United States, but it's all Ukrainian diaspora organizations across 60 countries. Notably, you saw protests today, calling shame against Russia in countries like Argentina, in countries like Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Portugal, all having events focusing on the fact that if we want to talk about that great victory of the Allied forces over the Nazis, we need to understand that the occupiers of Ukraine today are the new threat to the Western order, to the democratic order. They broke international law, and they chiefly did what the United States condemned Nazi Germany for doing, which was breaking the peace. This is what Russia did. It invaded a sovereign country, and it has done what we just saw in the report earlier, that attack on a school in Bilohorivka. tremendously tragic. Why would anybody do that? That is the shame, and Russia should be linked to that shame for the future, for at least a generation.
And what can you tell us about that bombing over the school?
Well, first of all, that is one of the oldest settlements in that province. It was laid down there, and that means that the further you go back in history and you start a village, which it become a bigger settlement nowadays, it was picked out specifically because of it lends itself to logistics, the location closer to the river, where the rail lines were being laid out. That is one of the reasons why a township, it's a metropolitan area, but not quite a city. That's one of the reasons that area was targeted. And it follows along everything we've seen as far as the Russian tactic, which is they want to control Ukrainian territory. They do not want to control Ukrainians. They will do this, which is killing Ukrainians, or using this as a tactic to drive Ukrainians away out of fear, or, as we have heard many more reports now, actually putting people on buses and shipping it away to the Russian Far East like the old Tsars used to do. So Russia is interested in holding territory, not necessarily the people are there. The people are there are going to be eliminated one way or another, and chiefly through these horrific acts like bombing a school.
All right. Well, I hate to leave it on that note, but we have to go. Andrij Dobriansky, thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.